Welcome to my office. That's the only thing in my office that would let you know it's my office. Brenna gave me that when she was leaving DVC. Shout out to Brenna, love her to death. Anyway, today's video is going to be about the summer because obviously for pretty much everyone other than I guess people going to NSDA, the season is over for college. It's been over for like almost a month or so at this point. And so there's a lot of people who are sort of wondering what should they be doing during the downtime? Should they be doing anything during their downtime? And as someone who's obviously director of a program here at DVC, this is a question that I regularly talk to my students about because we don't have classes over the summer for the speech and debate team, but we definitely find that the more successful students work year round, for lack of a better word, like obviously take a break and stuff. And so to just get right into it, I want to talk to you about quotas. And I want to talk to you about how I think there's a lot of people whose perspective on quotas and sort of mandated quotas when it comes to work or when it comes to school or whatever, their opinion's largely negative about that. Their interpretation of a quota is that sort of a quota for a quota's sake is not a good thing. And just in case you're unclear, when I say quota, I mean like sort of a mandatory amount of some amount of work you have to do, right? And so in the context of your job, it might be if you're a salesperson, like you must do 2 calls a week or whatever that might be. And the sort of criticism of this, generally speaking, is that if you know you have a quota and it's not based on sort of a successful outcome of some kind, but rather just on doing something to say you did something, then it sort of incentivizes you to just do those things, go through the motions, not take it seriously, not try really hard, whatever it might be, or that it just becomes busy work for individuals. And what I want to talk about and advocate for is that I think for a huge number of the young people that I work with, whether that's at the college level, the high school level, or the middle school level, a fundamental issue that they have is that they just don't do enough work. And I know that sounds sort of reductive or simple or whatever, but I've worked with over 1,000 students at this point in speech and debate, and I find that the vast majority of them do not do a sufficient amount of work to sort of align with the goals they've established for themselves, right? Because if you've decided that you're just doing this for fun or it's a social thing or you want to win every once in a while, then yeah, you can do kind of as little work as you want. But obviously, when we're speaking to the Proteus audience, I feel like if you're the kind of student who's watching, middle-aged men make videos on competitive debate, then you probably want to be more successful rather than sort of just, participating in debate in general. And what I want to stress is that I think a lot of people are they sort of hear this statement, right? That is, you should work smarter, not harder. And while that is certainly good advice to a point, and depending on context and whatnot, I think that is awful advice for most people in debate. Because the reality is, most students' problem is not that, they're working so hard and spinning their wheels and wasting their time. And so now they need to be more effective, more efficient, more selective with the work that they do. Most students' problem is that they're just not working enough, which is to say, in my opinion, you don't get to work smarter until you've proven that you can work hard. So where am I going with this? This summer, I'm going to be, working with a number of students from my team. I'm also going to be working with students from other teams. But for the students from my team, at least those who plan on doing LD this year, we're going to have a quota. Like, we're going to set a quota of the kind of work that I want them to do. And it's not going to be some massive lift, right? I'm thinking as of this moment, if you're going to do LD next year and you're not sort of one of the top returning varsity people, whatever, then you owe me 1 card every single day this summer. And I'm thinking the way that I'm going to do that is just at the end of the week, you owe me 7 cards. If you want to give them to me early, that's fine. If you want to do all 7 in one sitting, that's fine. If you want to do one each day, that's fine. Chop it up however you want. But every single week, you owe me 7 cards. And the purpose of that is not even, well, as of this moment, we don't even know what the LD topic will be for next year. And so I'm currently going to have them just cutting cards based on sort of generic things, right? Whether that's politics or whether that's the environment or, things going on in depending on the topic areas we know, because there's like an India topic area, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, I'm not doing this so that when we come in the fall, I have, depending on, let's pretend there's 4 students, they're going to do 7 cards over the summer every week. That's probably going to be about 100 cards per student. And frankly, I think this should be like 3 cards per day or something to that effect. But, we're going to keep it easy at first. My thing is, as of now, some of these students, because they just came into LD this semester, have cut between 0 and like 10 cards in their lives. And obviously that's because we didn't prioritize LD this year. We've never really, as a program, been like, this is the primary thing for us. But my thought process has sort of become that, like, well, if you cut 100 cards over the summer and then you come in the fall, even if we reset to 0, we throw all those cards away, you've cut 100 cards in your life, and maybe these other students have not, rather. And I think that I'm not even worried initially about the cards being any good, right? It's just the act of you being able to identify a time each day or each week where you're going to sit down and do an hour or 2 hours of debate work, I think is sort of the minimum effective dose required for you to be good, right? And, we mainly don't do LD, so maybe it won't be LD for the folks who aren't doing that or whatever. Maybe it'll be like, you owe me 3 Parley files a week, or 2 Parley files, or 1 Parley file, whatever it is, right? You can set the number at whatever you want. You have to cut 10 Ks this summer. You have to cut 10 theory shells this summer, whatever it might be. But the bottom line is, I think a huge problem students have is they're doing debate like crunch, right? They're doing everything at the last second. I always see this around national season, especially in parliamentary debate, where it's like teams who haven't done a whole bunch of stuff are trying to put it all together at the last second. And the reality is, you just need to get into a set of habits and routines and patterns where you're just always working and you're just always getting better at debate. And you can move away from the 1 card a day or the Parley file a week or whatever you want as soon as you know that I no longer need this structure to have discipline or to make up for the lack I have of motivation or whatever to do debate work. And I know I can just trust myself to work on what I need to work on. And I think it's fairly important that the things you're having them do aren't just like, do a fun thing that you really enjoy or whatever, because the students don't struggle to do the things that they want to do in debate, right? Like, if you're really into the Cap K and you're just like, oh, over the summer, cut a Cap K, like, what does that do for the student outside of something they already would have done? I think a huge part of coaching is encouraging students to round out their game, is identifying the flaws that they have currently in their approach to debate, and then having them put some attention towards developing those things. Now, it's entirely possible to be a very successful debater based purely on a cultivation of a singular strength or whatever, but I think that's only relevant if you're already exceptionally good. And I think if you're the kind of student who's considering what to do over the summer, you're not already really good, because otherwise you would know the answer to that question. And so what's my sort of like call to action for you folks or whatever? I think with your partner, with your coach, with your friends, with yourself, whatever, you this summer should decide on a quota you're going to satisfy. Could be daily, could be weekly, monthly, whatever you want. But I think it is crucial that this quota be quantitative in nature, okay? You don't want something that is subjective. You want an objective way to measure whether you've achieved the goal or not. And so, like I said, for my kids, it's going to be a card a day, at least a card a day. We'll figure it out. It depends on what's going on. And for you, it might be something different, right, depending on your format or day. But the bottom line is, if you're sitting there right now, you don't have a coach, you don't have direction over the summer, whatever. This is me, a debate coach, I would say an expert debate coach, telling you this is what you should do this summer. And so you have my permission to work, you have my permission to try and set a quota and to meet that thing. And I look forward to hearing from folks about how they felt this worked over the course of the summer, if it was a bad idea, if it was a good idea. But I can almost guarantee you there's no one who does work like this over the break who comes in the following season and hasn't significantly improved and hasn't got potentially ahead of the competition. And I think for a lot of folks, what they don't understand is, if you do this work over the summer and it's meaningful and it's, helps you develop skills, that sort of gap you create between you and your competition potentially never gets closed, because if you just keep working that hard and then the other people start working as hard as they normally work, they're 3 months behind you for the rest of the year. And so that's my advice. That's what I think you should do over the summer. That's what my kids are going to do over the summer if they want to be good. And welcome back to Proteus. Talk to you folks later.